Good evening and welcome to today's roundtable discussion with the candidates at Brooklyn's District 38. The topic at hand is education. And this is a topic that is extremely important to the community. A lot of people feel that education is the great equalizer. And especially now during this pandemic, inequities were brought to light. Inequities that we know have existed for a very long time, but now they're basically in your face. So we can't deny that these inequities exist. And this is a very pivotal moment in our history as we go through this historic pandemic, and we are trying to hopefully see our way out of it. I am going to bring on now my co-moderator, Javier Salamanca of Voces Ciudadanas. Javier, welcome to the forum.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me. Very fortunate and happy to be able to work with you on today's event.
So,
Yeah, so my name is Javier Salamanca. I work with Voces Ciudadanas. We're a 5 or 6 year old nonprofit grassroots that started here in Sunset, really talking about educational issues and trying to bring parents together. And we love working with you and working with the community.
Thank you. Now, before we start, there's something new that was brought to this election, right? Ranked choice voting. And what is that all about? So we have a short video that we're going to bring on regarding that. And if you give me a second, we'll cue it up. Okay. And that should be up momentarily.
Ranked choice voting method for all NYC primaries and special elections. Here's how it works. You can rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference. Pick your first choice candidate and fill in the oval next to their name under the first column. Use the second column for your next choice, and so on until you've ranked all your preferred candidates. Be sure to mark at least one candidate for your vote to count. You do not have to rank all candidates. Just remember, you can only choose one candidate for each column, and you cannot rank the same candidate more than once. For more information, go to vote.nyc.
Great. I hope everyone was able to see that. It's still a little complex, right? Some people still have don't have a clear understanding of how that works, and we plan on doing workshops as we get closer to the election. So we're going to bring on the candidates now, but I want to remind everyone that with regards to interpretation, we sent out the links for people to listen in Spanish, Chinese, and is that it, Javier?
Yes, so Spanish, Mandarin, and English. If people who are tuning in via the Zoom link, there's a little globe icon where you could pick your language, Chinese or Spanish, or you could keep watching in English.
Okay, great. So now we are about to introduce the candidates. And first up is Jackie Painter. Jackie, welcome to the forum.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Jackie Painter. I am from this district. I grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and I've just seen us be constantly disinvested and neglected by our current government. We are a strong waterfront community full of activists, immigrants, public housing residents, students, families, and we deserve to get as much resources and investment as other parts of the borough and the city. Last year I founded Red Hook Relief, Red Hook's mutual aid group, and throughout the pandemic we have been on the ground distributing food, water, PPE to families around Red Hook. And I have really seen the vast disparities of our communities and of our governments and the lack of neglect. We need a much stronger fighter and voice for things like our waterfront, because we're going to be underwater again at any moment. Our housing, our rents are too high. We also have Brooklyn's largest NYCHA development, which needs to be fully funded, and a lot of conditions need to be fixed. And our immigrant families who need a lot of support, legal support, language access support, as well as our schools. My mother is a teacher, and education is something that is extremely important to me. She taught me the value of a good education. She's still a teacher. She teaches at the Door in Manhattan. And that is something that we need a lot more investment in as well in District 38. Coming out of this pandemic, we need a strong fighter who can create a fair and just recovery for our working families, and not the corporations or developers who are constantly trying to take over our lands. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie. And up next, we have Alexa Avlies. Alexa, welcome to the forum.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this event tonight. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexa Avlies. I'm a Boricua, lifelong Brooklynite, and mom of 2 public school students in high school and middle school. I've lived in District 38 for almost 20 years, and I'm so proud to be running to be the next city council member of this district. My kids have grown up here, and so has my husband, Frankie. I've been and will continue to fight alongside my neighbors for our survival and our recovery, for fully funded public schools, for affordable housing, workers' rights, environmental justice. My lived experiences, long time work in social justice movement, and my role as a parent is what led me to politics. While being a working mom, I served as the president of the PTA at my daughter's school for almost a decade. I grew the budget 10 times over, and ensured students had adequate art and academic programs, and all the communications were translated. We helped families navigate everything from literacy strategies to domestic violence, to the traumas of deportation. We understood that politics is about talking to people, about learning what they need, and recognizing the power of solidarity to fight for what we deserve. I've watched this city become a place where only works for the rich. Luxury condos are going up, our neighbors are getting evicted and displaced and pushed out of our communities. The city and state keep cutting school budgets and services, but they seem to have enough money for endless overtime for the police and give subsidies to wealthy developers and corporations. So every day, this city becomes a little less livable for working day people. I'm running for this office because I love this vibrant, diverse community, and I'm proud to call Sunset Park my home. I'm fighting for a city that works for all working people. I want my daughters to inherit a New York where everyone has what they need and thrive. Again, my name is Alexa Avlies. I'm ready to take my service to the next level and organize for a better future with you all. On June 22nd, I would be honored to receive your vote.
Thank you, Alexa. And up next, we have
just a little reminder, please keep it slow.
Camarena.
I think the excitement is getting to people, which is totally normal. But just our interpreters are doing a great job. And just a quick shout out to our interpreters, to Deanna, to Genesis, to Julie, and to Susan, who are devoting their time today to make this accessible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rodrigo, welcome to the forum.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Am I coming through okay?
You're good. Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Rodrigo Camarena. My name is Rodrigo Camarena. I'm a parent. I'm a lifelong immigrant advocate, small business champion, and organizer running to be your next city council member. A little bit about me. Like many of my neighbors, I'm a proud immigrant. I was born in Mexico to 2 parents who taught me to fight for more and to demand justice everywhere I see injustice being had. For many years, I ran the Mixteca organization, a nonprofit here that helps immigrants incorporate into the city and community. I was a small business advocate, helping small businesses recover after Superstorm Sandy. Like many of you, I organized against rezonings and helped keep our neighbors in their homes and the communities that they've helped build over years. And now I'm running for office because for too long, we've been told a number of lies that are now coming to the fore during the pandemic. We've been told we couldn't have development without displacement, security without policing, prosperity without inequality. And I think those are false choices. I'm running for office to build permanently affordable housing and to bring land use decisions back into our community's hands. I'm running to ensure just recovery and create a more inclusive post-COVID New York City. And I'm running to invest in the caretakers, educators, and workers that truly keep us safe, and they're going to build the next and more prosperous New York. I'm Rodrigo Camarena. I'm running for city council to continue to serve this community, the community that I've served for the last 15 years. And I would be honored to have your support on June 22nd as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And up next, we have Victor Swinton. Victor, welcome to the forum.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Forums like this are just great for the candidates to come out and introduce themselves to the public. So my name is Victor Swinton. I am a kind of lifetime resident of Sunset Park. I've been here for 51 years. I went through the public education system from kindergarten up to college. I believe that this community needs more of a voice, not only from its council member, but from the people that we're serving. We have to definitely get folks to come together as one to have a stronger voice. Sunset Park has, in my opinion, been kind of dumped on. If you need a homeless shelter, put it in Sunset Park. Not that I'm saying that we're running away from it, but we have definitely been affected by a lot of things in Sunset Park: homelessness, mental illness, affordable housing. Talking to folks down in Red Hook, those housing, the NYCHA needs a lot of work down there. But education, getting to education, I'm all about the children, and we have to give them the resources, the teachers the resources to educate our children, because as they say, our children are our future, and we have to give them the resources they need to excel in education. So that's why I'm running for city council. I'm also asking for your vote June 22nd. Again, my name is Victor Swinton, and thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Victor. And joining us now is Cesar Zuniga. Cesar, welcome to the forum.
Can you hear me, Rob?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Gracias. Buenas tardes, comunidad. I'm Cesar Zuniga, and I'm running to represent District 38 in the City Council. I'm the proud son of working-class Mexican immigrants. As a child, my family was separated by our broken immigration system, and I know all too well the dire and long-term social and emotional consequences of family separation. I'm the father of two beautiful public school students. I've spent my entire professional career in education, first as a recent college grad teaching remedial high school English, then as a project associate at New York University's Metropolitan Center for Urban Education. And for the past 18 years, I've held various positions, and I'm currently the research director of an internationally implemented early childhood and family support program. And I'm also the proud chairperson of Community Board 7. I'm running for council because our communities are struggling. Our small businesses are closing. Too many of our neighbors lack quality and affordable health care. Our schools are woefully underfunded and far, far from living up to the promise of providing all of our students with the just and equitable education they deserve. Now more than ever, we need to come together. We need and ensure that bold and creative solutions take priority so that we can meet our most pressing challenges, whether the affordable housing crisis, economic development, fixing our schools, but most importantly, to ensure a just and equitable recovery. I hope you will rank me as your first choice vote on June 22nd. It's an honor to be here, and thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Cesar. And up next, I'd like to introduce Yulin. Welcome to the forum.
Hey, hi Rob, hi everybody. Thanks for hosting this event. I'm very thankful to be here. First of all, I would like to express my, I can't express enough appreciation to our translators, because I've been translator all my life, and I understand that it's not an easy task. So I'd like to thank you for your service, and thank you, Rob, and thank you, Javier, for having me here. So my name is Yulin. I'm also running for council to represent District 38. Just like many people, when I came here, when I was 8 years old, I didn't even speak an alphabet. I grew up in this neighborhood. I went to school, went to college, received an education, started a family. By the way, I'm also a father of two beautiful children, boy and a girl. I started my business. My business was actually, believe it or not, social adult daycares. So my business is about taking care of seniors, knowing their needs, getting to know them, knowing their specific needs. And the reason why I'm running actually is because that as a longtime resident and a lifetime voter since I was eligible, and I've been using this privilege all the time, and it just happened to me that I feel I had to run. This is the time that we, the people, had to voice out our actual need. My platform is being run on simple ideas. Public safety, we want safer streets for everyone, cleaner, affordable housing, and good paying jobs. I'm not here to talk big. I just want to be practical and solve realistic issues, things that actually are relevant to us. We all live here. We want a safer environment. When I was here at 8, I was able to play outside with my neighbor, Marco, playing hide and seek. But nowadays, you wouldn't allow your kids to go outside because it's unsafe, right? Without supervising. And amid a pandemic, we know sanitation, public sanitation is very important. We want to prevent any biological, hazard to come to us. Since day one, I have made my commitment that I will physically walk through every single block in District 38, speaking to as many people as I can. It will be presumptuous for anyone, especially me myself, to think that I know you're in need without actually listening to you. Me personally, I have went out to streets. I have talked to Uber driver, dishwashers, business owners, seniors. For me, I don't even care if they're citizens or not. The plain fact that you live in this district is a perfect reason for me to know your need, for me to listen to you. I will always be here listening to you, for your need. Just like my team, that consists of 20 wonderful people that came from all ethnicity, all kind of background, in all walks of life. I listen to everyone. I do not have any agenda for any specific group. I'm here to listen to everyone. You can have different opinion. I respect freedom of speech, and I enjoy it. You can be Trump supporter or Trump hater. That doesn't bother me at all. I will listen to your opinion. We're always friends and family, and we're stronger being united. I don't care if you're immigrant, if you're green card, or if you're citizen, or even if you're not voting for me at all. I'll always listen to you. I will be physically here for you. And when I get elected in office, what you have told me throughout this campaign period will be the things that I will work on. I believe election is not just one-sided giving of information. It's also us as candidate listening to the people. Likewise, as we telling the candidate what we can offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so who's ready to start? The first topic we're going to touch on is very relevant to what we've seen during the pandemic, right? Mayoral control over the DOE. And at times it was kind of comical to see the mayor and the governor contradict each other on how things were supposed to run, right? Do we want to, the mayor would say one thing, we're going to close, we're not going to close. The governor would say another. And it was literally comical to see the two of them go at it like that. Now we have a new chancellor, and things are still they just don't feel right. Leadership probably needs to change. I don't know, but what I want to throw out there for thought is, should the mayor have complete control over the DOE? Is that an effective way to manage the largest system in the country? Maybe we can start with, and now let's see who wants to go first. We'll go with you. So the mayor, is that an effective way to have to lead this system? Should the mayor have complete and total control of the DOE?
I don't believe that anyone should have that much power, control over an issue that is of such importance, education, which is our children, our next generation, our future. Especially amid the pandemic, like you said, it's almost comical the way they're handling the policies. Saying that they're going to close the school, they're not going to closing school. It's almost like playing a game, tossing around the ball. That is irresponsible to the fullest extent. We need long-term planning. We need to know that what is important, priorities for our education systems. And to answer your direct question, no, the mayor should have that much power over what to say in our education. And I have spoken to moms about what their thoughts on virtual schooling. And a lot of them had complained the same issue. When the children are home, they can have the screen on one side, and on the little corner, they will be watching their YouTube channels. They're playing their little game. And teachers just can't do anything about it. These are very practical things that parents are worried about. If this continues, if pandemic continues, unfortunately, we do not have much clue as a public as to when this pandemic will end, or the long-term planning of the city or the government in general, state level, federal level, etc. But it's very important that the public needs to be equipped. How long would this kind of situation continue? How long would our children be doing virtual schooling? Virtual schooling is not the same as a physical classroom, even though it's unsafe right now to go in. It's very important that we have enough vaccines given to these school staffs, teachers, and students, most importantly, students. It's very fortunate that we have technologies like we do right now, but it's not enough. As good as technology can be, that does not substitute the real education when it comes to people and physical activities, physical education, and etc. We cared about the quality of the education as much as we cared about our future. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone.
Cesar, what are your thoughts on this? The mayor, the governor, the chancellor, all contradicting each other during the pandemic, and when schools should close, when should they open? What are your thoughts on that?
So a couple of things. First of all, leadership matters. And to answer your question very directly, no, absolutely not. The mayor should not have complete control over our schools. Look, as someone who spent time in the classroom, I know firsthand the importance of local control. I know firsthand we have to get governance and accountability right, so that teachers and local administrators can actually do the stuff that we pay them to do, which is to teach and to do pedagogy, right? And if we can get the bureaucracy out of the way, I think teachers will be a lot more effective in doing what they're intended to do. So I think part of what we have to start having conversations about is figuring out how to either massively reform mayoral control. And what do I mean by that? We need to bring more stakeholders to the table for accountability and governance. I think the city council needs to play a greater role in this movement of accountability and governance. I think the CECs need to play a much greater role, right? Because again, I think the CECs are the closest, basically the closest structure to the ground, to the parents, to the students, and they need a voice at the table. We need to figure out funding schemes that empower the CECs more, that give them the resources to make the really local decisions about about what makes schools function better. So we've given the mayor, we've given this whole idea of mayoral control for the last basically 2, 3, 4 administrations. And the needle hasn't moved, particularly for communities of color, and it's time for us to have some serious conversations about bringing more stakeholders to the table for governance and accountability of our schools.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up. I like that you mentioned the CECs, and it's extremely unfortunate. Well, for those who are not familiar with CECs, they're basically the school board. And it was kind of a new thing that was introduced by Mayor Bloomberg, where the CECs have basically zero power. It seems like they're just there for show. And I can attest to this as someone who serves on a CEC. We're just there to have monthly meetings and to argue with each other, and nothing gets done, right? It's just silly resolutions that it feels like mean absolutely nothing. So it's extremely unfortunate that the mayor has so much control, yet the CECs, like you mentioned, people who are on the ground, have been stripped of any power to advocate for the communities that they were elected to represent. So I think that that's an interesting point, and I would like to turn it over to Alexa.
I just wanted to interject. So,
Sure.
Previous to CECs, there were community boards that had budget power, and that was deemed too political and too nepotistic, and there was no accountability because it was a board of people from across the community who, in the end, made the decision and all these factors. So I was wondering, just as we answer this question, if we could have, what is the in-between? What is the alternative? Because everyone was for mayoral control to get rid of that 10, 15 years ago. Now people don't want mayoral control, but the CECs are not structured to be that. So what is it?
So thank you, Rob. I guess the first thing I'll say is mayoral control has proven to be a failure, right, for over 2 decades. In fact, public opinion is pretty clearly in favor that it's also been a failure, right? So I think that's been a proven fact. And yes, Javier, we did have these local school boards, right? They were unelected school board members, and there were lots of problems with it. So I would say there is alternatives. There is a group of parents that have been organizing over decades called the Parents Commission, who put out some really interesting alternatives. We didn't mention that the citywide school board became what is known as the PEP, the Panel for Education Policy. So it's the chancellor and the PEP, right? There is no actual accountability between those two bodies, and there should be. And also the mayor appoints the majority of the PEP members. And so that body has been a rubber stamp body. So one of the alternatives is, if we have a citywide educational body, that it be democratized, right? That parents will get elected to these bodies, that there may be appointments, but they not be the majority of the seat holders, right? So that you have a group of stakeholders truly that represent the interests of the families and the students that make this system what it is. So I think there are multiple other structures we can look into, like an AG, right? An auditor for the actual Board of Education. There's an ombudsman role that could be created, right, to really support families when they have issues with the Department of Education, where there's accountability. There's an office proposed to look at actual metrics of schools, because many people do not trust what the Department of Education actually puts out. And that's for very good reasons. Numbers can be funny. So there are many alternative models. The important thing is to bring parent stakeholders, right? Education is a human right. So an activist called them rights holders to the table, school workers, and student voice is important as well.
Thank you, Alexa. Again, very interesting points, right? The mistrust of the community in the DOE. That sounds like it shouldn't be. It just should not be, where there's no mistrust between the community and the people put in charge to educate our children. And part of, if there's going to be change, sometimes there needs to also be a cultural shift between
Absolutely.
departments like the DOE and mayoral control, and how CECs. Now, someone was asking in our live chat about what does CEC stand for, and it's basically Community Education Council, and that's what that acronym stands for. But again, those councils have zero power. Now let's speak with Rodrigo. Rodrigo, what do you think about mayoral control, and is that an effective way to run our system?
Thanks, Rob. I think when we evaluate whether mayoral control is the right thing for New York City moving forward, we have to think about the objectives of that, and what are our objectives as parents for our students and our children. And for me, the model that we should be advocating for is a model that ensures that there are, there's a set of standards that we're all meeting as students and as educators, but also that there's flexibility in us being able to educate our students in the way that we think is most appropriate. So I would advocate for a system that provides flexibility to how teaching is being implemented and done locally. The alternative, where there are a number of unelected school board chairs, and the former system was overhauled because of corruption and because of a lack of representation. So I wouldn't want to go back to that system necessarily. I'd be interested in looking at alternatives. But again, for me, the focus is bringing control into parents' hands, ensuring equity and equality of outcomes in our educational system. And I would advocate for any model that perpetuates that. It can be a mayorally controlled model, but I think we need to understand that that model needs more flexibility, more representation, and to allow for more agency from parents and a diverse set of parents, right?
Yes, thank you, Rodrigo. And Victor, same topic, right? What are your thoughts on mayoral control of the DOE?
Well, first I want to get into the governor and the mayor's childish act. I think with them going back and forth at each other, which in my opinion is kind of is personal, is affecting how services are given here in the city. Mayoral control, I tend not to have a problem with it, because he has to respond, or he has to go up to our state legislators to get permission to extend it. So I think more involvement from our state legislators when they feel something's not being done is definitely needed. These different programs, the CECs, the PEPs, as was mentioned earlier, need to be empowered with power that can make a difference in the classroom, because that should be what our main focus is, in the classroom. As long as we give the power to other folks to forcefully, and sometimes you got to use the word forcefully, make the change that's necessary for our students, for our kids, I think needs to be done. The chancellor, you can have, whether it's from the mayor or the state picks or whoever picks the chancellor, we got to hold that individual accountable also, to ensure that they are following the mandate of our parents. Our parents has to have a say in the educational process that goes on in the city. It just can't be, you're dictating to the parents what's going on when the parents actually have some idea more or less of what their kids needs, and we just need to have more accountability, give more power to other entities in the educational system so that they could hold people to the fire, and I think we will have a better educational system.
Thank you, Victor. Jackie, same topic. What is your stance on mayoral control of the DOE?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, first of all, it's time for community-powered change in our schools. And this starts with empowering parents and giving the community a say on DOE policy and on their own children's education. You know, New York City, being the diverse and massive city that we are, we have a very diverse and large school system with different communities and very different needs. A one-size-fits-all model does not fit for everyone in our city and leaves people out, period. So we need community directly involved. We need to make sure that our schools are community centered, and we can do that by expanding the authority of the city council and the community education councils. Because, you know, for far too long, the mayor's office has shaped our education without accountability. And it undermines our community's trust in schools. You know, this year during the pandemic, 31,000 students have left the New York City public school system this year alone. And that is horrifying. Doing mutual aid this year with Red Hook Relief and speaking to parents, I've heard firsthand about parents' lack of trust with the school system and the school boards. So we need to make sure that the chancellor is also directly held accountable, and our school boards are elected. They're made up of parents and teachers that have a true stake in this matter, right? That way they also truly represent the community, and the community, it further empowers the community to be part of that decision that affects their schools. Not just accountability, but we need to make sure that there is transparency in this process. I mean, just here alone, we've talked about acronyms and CEC and the school board and everything, but we need to make sure that our parents and our working families know how these processes work and give them a seat at the table. There's not enough transparency in our government right now. There's not enough trust, and there's not enough accountability. That doesn't happen when you have one person in charge with a blanketed model. To get this done, we need these reforms to get achieved by a fighter, someone who has worked in coalitions to get things done with community. And I am so excited to do that.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, during this pandemic, a lot of people were saying the pandemic is an equalizer, right? Because everyone can be exposed, anyone can get sick. And I had a problem with that term because I don't think it was an equalizer, so to speak. I think that those families and those people with privilege, because of their privilege, were able to, let's say, work safely from home, right? Those neighbors who are essential workers were always being exposed to the virus and to many other different difficulties that this pandemic only made more difficult. So one thing that I hear from families, especially families with children in special ed or IEPs, and IEP is another acronym. It basically stands for Individualized Educational Plans for Special Education Students. And because of schools being shut down, these students did not receive a lot of the resources or different education from different maybe speech therapists or different type of needs that could only be given if the school buildings were open or if they had access to it. And I think that the chancellor, the mayor, and everyone in charge did not attend to the needs of these students. And I'd like to know your thoughts on special ed, on IEP students, on IEP families. How can we fix these inequities that our neighbors that have students with IEPs are suffering? They're not getting the resources that they need, and it's at times borderline criminal. Right, there are students that still do not have devices. School's over in a few months, and they have not received devices, and that is a shame that happens in one of the richest cities on the planet. Right? Think about that. Kids in the most richest city on the planet don't have these resources. I think that should anger all parents. But I'd like to know your thoughts on how we help families with students with IEPs. And I guess we can start with Cesar. Let's.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, so this particular issue is super personal to me, because my two boys have IEPs, and I cannot begin to tell you how frustrating, how difficult it was on our entire family to shift from in person to virtual. And to me, I became really angry very quickly because, again, leadership matters, and this is one area where the administration, the chancellor, got it wrong, and they got it wrong to the disproportionate detriment of children with special needs and who require the type of support services that they get in schools, in school buildings. And so for me, there should have been a priority to bring back the youngest learners, so pre-K3, pre-K4 kids, and special needs kids to the classroom as soon as possible. And they didn't do that. And they botched the whole virtual, the whole mixed modality. They botched it. And it created an undue burden on families like ours that really struggled, because part of what kids get in schools with IEPs, as you mentioned, is a whole assortment of support services and professionals who are there to attend to the different way that these kids learn. And I think as we look forward, and as we talk about education, we really have to do a lot better by this population. And then part of doing better by this population is to shift our thinking about what these kids need. They need an education, a quality, equitable education, just like any other kid who is in regular education. And so there needs to be, first of all, that sort of mind shift that, kids with special needs have just different approaches to learning. And so we need to make sure that we equip our educators with this knowledge that, and not only with the knowledge, but again, like really doubling down on the resources. Now, it's a travesty. I mean, never mind the sort of the hardships over the last 12 months with the pandemic. Our district, on top of having to cope and deal with that, our district has been historically underfunded, and the resources or the lack of resources that exist for kids with special needs in our district is criminal. And I've talked to a lot of parents. I'm very proud of being part of a group called Visión Futuro, which is a bunch of fierce moms who have come together to like really create advocacy around the dire needs that we have in this district. And so the fact that we don't have the resources that other districts have, like sensory gyms, like the actual programs that kids with autism, for example, need to thrive and to get the just and quality education that they deserve is beyond reproach. And so I think as we look forward, and as I look forward to being in the council, one of the things that I really am going to use my voice and my power is to really double down on the resources, not just for, again, general education, but special education, because I think you said it best. It's verging on criminal, the neglect that the administration has shown toward kids with special needs.
Thank you, Cesar. Victor, what are your thoughts on IEP families and students in special education? How do we help them? What can be done at the city council level?
Well, I have to agree with Cesar. I mean, he has children who has special needs. I don't, but I do agree that we have neglected those children. I understand safety is the main concern in this pandemic, but when we started allowing kids back into schooling, they should have been the first group back, right? They need more attention in school, and we should have gave them that. We should have had more budgeting opportunities to give them the learning lesson they need. So I do agree to an extent on the part that is almost criminal that we let these children down. So I think it just comes down to we have to, whoever's the mayor, the chancellor, has to refocus their ideas on how to bring kids back to school. Who needs the schooling, the in-person teaching more? You talk about giving out equipment to children, and some children don't have it. I really wonder where and what communities don't have it. You can take a guess, but we have to ensure that education is giving to our children, especially those in need, even those who have taken up another language, the language of English maybe in school, that we should not just leave them behind because it's an easy choice, but they should be our first choice for us to go forward in the educational circle.
Thank you, Victor. Valid point, right? I think we can all agree that we let these children down. The system let these children down. And I think that whoever becomes our next council member really needs to put pressure in City Hall to make sure that we never let these children down again. And if there's anything that we can convey to you all as community members, is that you all find the strength to do that for us, to really fight in City Hall for these families, because it's completely not right. We let them down. Jackie, what are your thoughts on this? How do we help IEP families?
Yes, thank you for the question again. You know, I've run into a lot of families that have been facing challenges, so many different challenges, trying to get the best quality education for their student and for their child at this time. The pandemic has really exposed the deep disparities within our communities and within our education system and within the investment that the government makes in our children. All of our children deserve an quality education that is accessible and affordable and close by, and the city needs to do better. We need to ensure that our children, of course, get the tools that they need whether it's remote learning, whether it's a type of laptop or device, a Zoom membership or whatever, Google Hangout membership, and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi access is a huge problem within our District 38 in Red Hook, Sunset Park. We have vast Wi-Fi issues. And if we do in-person learning, if we do need to go in person for some of our children, then we need to be passing out PPE to our children, making it as safe as possible. Employing people, local community members. We can wash down the schools. We can sanitize the schools, and we can maybe use some of our great outdoor spaces. Right? We're very, very privileged to have amazing parks and amazing outdoor spaces as a waterfront community, and we should be utilizing them. And we should be figuring out how to do that in the safest way possible. Special needs children and all kinds of children have very unique needs that need that individualized support and funding from our government and from our communities. And something else that I believe is very, very important that the pandemic exposed was we need to make sure we have a more holistic approach to our education. If you are a child and you are hungry, or your family can't afford rent, you're not going to be able to get a quality education. Or maybe you have transportation issues getting to your school, or mobility issues. We need to make sure that we are taking care of our families. Our children are not the future, not just the future, they're our present as well. So we need to make sure that we invest in them and give them the support that they need, no matter what type of education they need. Everyone deserves a quality education.
Thank you, Jackie. Rodrigo, what are your thoughts on helping families with special needs and IEP students?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. This issue was so sad to see. So many families in our district that were struggling, were desperate, were demanding that the city do right by them. Visión Futuro and their activism, showing up and holding the chancellor and the mayor accountable. It was truly heroic, and I think we owe them a debt of gratitude because they were fighting for their kids when our own government wasn't. And I think the inequities that we saw with the reopenings, with the treatment of students with individualized educational plans, shows how our systems aren't designed for the most vulnerable. Our educational systems, our transportation systems, our housing systems, we don't think of the most vulnerable first. We think of them as an afterthought to how we create policy, to how we create programs. And that can't continue. As city council member, I will fight for the most vulnerable. I will create policies and programs that prioritize them, because when you help those that are most in need, who need the most attention, the most support, you help everyone else by default. So I think the mayor should have acted more quickly, decisively, known that for many of these parents, keeping their children at home isn't really an option. And I think we could have mobilized more resources to retrofit schools, to prepare spaces for children with special needs as an urgent matter, as a critical matter, and we didn't do that, and we failed them miserably. And I think that's what needs to change moving forward. We can't continue to fail the most vulnerable, especially because it's costing lives and it's costing futures. And so I really feel for all the parents and all the students who lost out on months of education, of high quality education, because we've impacted their future now, and we need to make that right. So moving forward and now we need to ensure to fight for the most vulnerable always, and firstly create programs and policies that prioritize them first, and ensure that the inequities that we've seen in their schools are no longer perpetuated, because they're creating a system of inequality that's reverberating in economic losses for these families, social and emotional losses and impacts, and those are permanent traumas that we now have to manage and support.
Thank you, Rodrigo. You, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we assist and help families with IEP students and families with children in special education.
Right. Yeah. First of all, I do see one of our viewers comment that it's students or IEPs, not IEP students, please. And yeah, thank you for that statement. So concerning students with IEPs and families, I have personally had dialogues with them, interview with parents, and it turns out that I would say 90% of the times, the caregiver's burden is laid on the mom. Unfortunately, the mom is being too overburdened. Now, a lot of mom lost their job because of COVID, and they're in some struggle, financial struggle. And meantime, they had to take care. They had to take care of these children with IEPs, and unfortunately, they were not being sufficiently educated, given the resources, either the financial resources, devices, or even food. Very specific things. Now they had to spend more time with the children, and with IEP, they need to know. They need to be equipped with the professional knowledge. They need to be trained. That's what I mean. They need to be trained. They need to be paid for the effort that they put in, because a lot of them, even with jobs, they cannot get another job. Otherwise, there will be nobody taking care of their children with special needs. So it's very sad that we've been talking about a lot of things, but without digging into the real field. You had to go into the field and know the actual problems. You had to get these caregivers, make them happy. If caregivers are not happy, if they are stressed, how can they perform the best quality of caring that they're supposed to give? We had to make these caregivers happy. We need to take care of their needs first. And we had to make sure that they can provide adequate services and education, the right education needed for their children, for the clientele, not the clientele, but the care receiver, the receiving side. In this case, a student with IEP with special needs. Yeah. So I really hope that the city, the chancellor, and the mayor will focus more on the parents in most cases, or caregiver in general, that make sure they are equipped, they're being taken care of financially, and with professional knowledge, and also devices, all necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, you. And Alexa, what are your thoughts on special
Great.
education?
Thank you so much. I have worked with so many families across the district with students with IEPs and very different needs. I will say the first thing we have to address is the fact that before the pandemic, the Department of Education had a backlog of thousands of cases of families that had not received the services that were legally mandated to those families. And so we have already been starting with a deficit in a system that was very much broken. And the pandemic just really exacerbated and showed what we're seeing, the inequities. And so the first thing I will say is that this is a perfect area where we need to increase funding, right? There hasn't been sufficient resources given to schools to both address the issues that the children need, to address their particular needs. There aren't pathways for specialized staff, right? Whether it's speech therapists or other specialties that students need. We need to create pathways for training for those workers to be able to meet those needs. We need a real multi-year plan, right? That is going to actually have benchmarks and a dedicated person in the Department of Education that is truly tracking this, right? And making sure that we are making progress, that we are meeting families and children's needs across the board. However, that is not the case, but we will be fighting to get a dedicated staff person, to getting a real plan, to getting real funding, and to creating pathways for staff that we need that can address the multitude of needs of our families and students.
Thank you, Alexa. Now, I heard a lot of you mention different organizations in the community that advocate for families and students. And speaking with these organizations myself personally, there seems to be, and this is what I hear from them, there seems to be almost a culture of retaliation whenever parents try to advocate for their children. And this is something that has been happening for some time, because I've heard this before, and it just seems to be a little escalated now that we are in this pandemic, because these needs have now been put in your face, and we can't deny them anymore, right? So this culture of retaliation when parents advocate for their children, retaliation from principals, retaliation from the districts, how do we change that culture? Can we change that culture, or is there anything that you can help advocate for to help changing this culture? And I'd like to start now with Victor and this culture of retaliation when parents stick up for their kids. What parent would not advocate for their own children, and at the same time advocating for parents who might be in the same situation, or these other great organizations in our community that advocate for our families? But I think this culture of retaliation has to change. No one should feel intimidated to speak up for their children, to speak up for the children in their community. What, if any, can be done, and what could you all do if you were to become our next council member to help shift this culture of retaliation? And Victor, I would like to start with you.
This is why you want to become a council person, to be that voice for the people. It's talking about criminal. That sounds almost criminal to me, that you're being retaliatory towards someone because they're talking up for their kid. That sounds crazy to me. So, but what we have to do is we got to get together, form a coalition. Our stakeholders, when I say stakeholders, our politicians have to lead the front on this, so that retaliation is not going to come back to the parents. It's going to come to those elected officials whose job is to go in there and fight for those parents. And once those principals or those superintendents or the district leaders, whoever they are, have to deal with a strong council person, state senator, or maybe even on the federal level, we have to go that far. I think their attitude will change, because the last thing anyone in leadership wants is somebody who's keep knocking on their door, giving it back to them. So the retaliation would definitely be off the radar with me. I will try to keep them out of that, off that radar. Let me put it that way. Keep them off that radar, because I wouldn't want anything to happen to their child in school due to retaliation or to that parents. And I will take all the heat if I was the council person in that district.
Thank you, Victor. Javier, you wanted to chime in?
I just wanted to chime in a little bit, thinking about the current structures of the DOE, current structures that exist. There already exist structures that supposedly support parents, and so how would we restructure those to actually provide the backing that parents need? Because I know there's a lot, and it's all the DOE. Sometimes they're housed in the same office next to each other. So how do we create independent support for parents? I think to take that question a little further about what your role as city council to really restructure some of these things that already exist in the DOE to provide parents the kind of support and the independence from that connection between principal, the parent advocacy part. How do we do that? Because I think that's a lot of what I hear from Rob and from other parents is they're too connected, right? They make a plan behind closed doors, and a parent is facing the bureaucracy of the
DOE. Thank you, Javier. So we'll turn it over to you, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this culture of retaliation that seems to exist in our district.
Right. This sounds to me is a very serious issue. And again, I haven't heard from both sides. There's always a both sides of the story. But if such culture exists and we have solid proof, I think we should take it very seriously and have this culture fixed immediately. This should not continue or even stay for a moment in our educational system. No parent should be should have the fear to speak up for the children or in children in general, in fear that would be in fear of retaliatory action. That is just wrong in any single way, in ethic and in moral, I think even by law, it's wrong. That is a serious issue, and if I was to be elected or even not elected, I'll certainly stop that kind of culture in any form or ways possible. Thank you.
Thank you, you. And I'd like to turn it over to Alexa. Alexa, what if any can be done?
Yeah,
to
I
change
think
this
that,
culture?
sure. I think the first piece of this, and it also ties to the last question, is that we need to ensure, right, that parents have meaningful and authoritative bodies and spaces, right, that they can actually determine policy and weigh in, right, in meaningful ways, not the rubber stamp ways that we know of the current structure, right? So I think that's centering parent voices in meaningful ways is an important culture shift that we have to do from the very school level all the way up, right, to the chancellor, to the control, and so I think I mentioned an ombudsman role is another role, another office, an independent body that might be able to support parents more, right? Since there is this notion of fighting against a system that is entrenched. Sometimes you're in a school building that, the administration is uninterested in what parents have to say, right? And there are no outlets for parents. They end up having to go to central office and they feel very unheard there. So I think we have to create other pathways. We have to shift the culture that says parents are critical, right? They are rights holders, right? Because education is a human right. And they are meaningful and their voices are meaningful. So I think creating offices with authority, also ensuring that we fund resources for parents, right? To understand the system, to navigate properly, to get the support that they need, right? Even language access. I translated for hundreds of parents who were trying to get the most basic of services, who felt overwhelmed by the system and sometimes retaliated against a school administration. So all these pieces will be important to include funding an office, funding pathways, making sure parent voice is centered and meaningful and has authority on policy making. And I think those are some of the pieces here around how we're going to shift this culture.
Thank you, Alexa. Rodrigo, being retaliated against, it sounds really horrible, right? What would you do? How could you help change that culture where parents aren't afraid to speak up? Because it does happen, right? You all before mentioned different organizations that exist that advocate for parents. If there wasn't this retaliation taking place, there wouldn't be a need for these organizations to exist, that their purpose is to stand by parents for support when they are being retaliated against. So what do you think of, how do we change this culture? What can we do to help families who are being retaliated against?
Yeah, thanks. I think, across the system, we need to look at a number of barriers and a number of inequalities. I would assume that, a lot of the retaliation is happening between what is a majority white teacher population and majority minority parent population. So I would want to understand the racial dynamics there, and also ensure as a response that we have that our teachers and our educators reflect the communities that they're teaching in. So I think there's a lot of power dynamics that happen in the school environment that reflect racial inequality in the city, and especially in our educational system. And there are obviously a number of mechanisms we should explore and try. We should look at ways of delivering feedback anonymously. We should look at ways of bringing a culture of empathy and respect and racial justice to the relationship between parents and teachers. And so, from various mechanisms to assure that there is accountability, that accountability is respected, that accountability is monitored by someone, maybe a third party, to understanding the dynamics that are already underway in our school system that make it difficult for parents to speak up. Language access barriers around technology, barriers around navigating a very complex system that often speaks over parents' heads, I think are other things we should look at. But I'm really interested in us addressing as a city and as a community the inequities, especially tied around race, class, that are reflected very visibly in our educational system. So those are a few ideas, and those are things that I want to tackle as council member.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Jackie, what are your thoughts on this culture of retaliation?
Yes, thank you for the question again. The culture of retaliation is horrible. It puts a lot of pressure on our families and our teachers, and it puts a lot of fear into standing up for what's right. It suppresses a lot of our community voices, and it's really a racial justice issue and a classist issue. Parents of color, especially in District 38, are treated differently because of the deep systemic racism embedded in our education system in New York City. People have power when they come together. Communities have power, and the DOE does not have the accountability needed. In this community-centered approach that I've been talking about, decisions that parents make, they would feel supported to come together, because when everyone has a seat at the table and is heard, systems of accountability, this creates systems of accountability, and this creates a better outcome. I believe that this is why we need students and parents as advocates in the BOE office. No one is a better expert on children and education than students and parents. I truly believe that people are being left out of the conversation, period. And we need to make sure that our families have a say, and that will really change the system.
Thank you, Jackie. Cesar, this culture of retaliation, what do we do to change it?
Yeah, so thank you, Robin. And I really, really appreciate you framing this as a cultural issue, because that's exactly what it is. And I think what we have to do is work very intentionally to change the culture in education, in this particular context in our educational system. I fell in love with the idea of education because of this guy, Paulo Freire, Brazilian theorist. And basically he narrowed down education as this idea of education is basically an exercise in liberation, right? In allowing people to really be part of their own destinies. And so we really have to work toward creating that system, right? And so when you talk about the system of retaliation, that has a direct relationship with how top down our education system is and how it's structured in that top down way, right? So I think part of what we have to do, and part of what I want to bring to the city council, is a really radical idea, which is asking parents and stakeholders to be part of the solution, right? And so we have to double down on these inductive approaches for doing service, for delivering services, whether it's government service, whether it's educational services. And what do I mean by these inductive approaches? Where we're asking people to be part of the solution, to be active members of change, as opposed to just, doing this, again, top-down, formal way of classifying people based on risk factors or based on zip codes, right? Like, again, the best way to change this culture is to like really create spaces and opportunities for families to have a seat at the table, and that requires a massive cultural shift across the entire system, not just at the classroom level, but how, again, going back to how schools are governed and what kind of accountability mechanisms we have. So again, I'm looking forward to like really doubling down on these types of approaches, and also not just saying it and creating all of these like opportunities. In addition to creating the opportunities, you have to also double down on building the people's capacity to actually take advantage of having that seat at the table. So this is a funding question. This is a political question. This is a cultural shift that we have to very intentionally tackle. And that's tough, but it's doable, and it's the right thing to do if we really believe that education is about liberation.
Thank you, Cesar. And all these different topics are definitely, without a doubt, intertwined, right? Because up next, I want to talk about a topic that is extremely divisive, and there are various opinions on this, and that is the ever so famous Gifted and Talented program, right? Being that we are, again, no one needs to be reminded, this pandemic that has exposed these inequities in your face where we can't deny them. Gifted and talented, some feel, is taking away resources, right, from regular or general education. Again, I want to remind everyone, there's still children today that do not have devices, right? And then gifted and talented programs are still receiving a lot of funding. So that, to me, from where I'm sitting, does not seem fair at all. I'm curious to know your thoughts on the gifted and talented program. There are a wide range of statistics that find, and this is from independent organizations and universities, where the evidence seems to be pretty clear that gifted and talented programs, by design, when this idea was thought of, was meant to segregate our system. And if we look at the different populations that are in or that make it to the gifted and talented programs, they are some very clear ranges of different groups that make it to the gifted and talented program. So I would like to know individually what you think, or what is your stance on the gifted and talented program. And I would like to start.
I just want to hop in with something.
Sure, please.
So it's a great, amazing topic. I just would love to, let's try to, we're a little bit behind time. We wanted some other topics we want to get to do it as concise as possible. We don't have a timer, but we just up to you, Scouts Honor, here to keep it as short and direct to the point as possible. There's some other issues we want to get to, and we don't want to push too much past our 7 o'clock bedtime. No, not bedtime.
Great. So let's start with Jackie. What is your stance on GNT?
Yes, thank you for the question. I will try to be very brief, like you said, but this is another racial justice matter that I mentioned before. And as one of the most diverse cities in the entire world, New York City has one of the most segregated school systems in this country, which is wild to me. And we need to do everything possible that we desegregate our school system. We need to make sure there are absolutely no barriers to any child receiving a quality education. I believe that no one single test should measure how we put students in different programs. We need to fully fund our public school system so that every child can have a gifted and quality education. And I want to prioritize all students as council member, and like I mentioned before, in holistic ways. And all students should have access to devices, Wi-Fi, PPE, and this also happens with making more schools, right? There's a lot of different things. I'm going to end there, but also making sure that our teachers are being paid a just salary. That also ensures a quality education, and our teachers are essential workers. So they're our superheroes. I mean, we need to do them a lot better than we're doing now. So I'll stop there, but thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. What are your thoughts on the Gifted and Talented program?
Okay. First of all, I think the name Gifted and Talented is kind of misleading, because you don't just born with a gift and talented and then stick with you for the rest of your life. A lot of it is about, it's not just the nature, also the nurture. You have to achieve, you have to aspire to be success and work hard toward that goal. My overall standing is to expand the program and to have more children from all kinds of racial ethnicity to go into the program, not destroying the program itself, or to lower the bar for the program. I think the program is for education, for people to get better, to be more talented, to be trained better, to be equipped with the latest technology, the most pioneering scientific discovery, and to be equipped for a ever more competitive world. We need to bring more children up. In order to join the program is actually, the test itself is not just a measurement of the hour-long, or a couple hours long of performance that the children have done. It's actually a performance of the totality of what the children have achieved and learned throughout the years, from elementary school, junior high, and etc. That should be the goal of the admission, to be able, and again, we should put more resources, fundings, and better teachers throughout the grades, not just for the GNT program, but also the pipeline into GNT. We need to expand this pipeline and also expand the program itself, so more children can achieve, not just for the wealthy families, but also families that came from disadvantaged families. We need to provide resources for them, that they will make sure that they have the equal opportunity as rich families to be able to be admitted into GNT program. Thank you.
Thank you. Rodrigo, what are your thoughts on the GNT program?
Every single student is gifted and talented in some way or another. We need to do without these specialized screens that start as early as age 4. We're tiering and segregating our students when they're just toddlers, and that's wrong. I don't think we should have a GNT program as it currently exists, or should be tiering our pupils in that way. We need to fully fund our schools, provide quality education to everyone. I don't think it's about equality of opportunity. I think education is about equality of outcomes. We need to ensure equal outcomes for every single child in the city. And the GNT program, in my view, exacerbates the inequalities that are longstanding and that show themselves up in other ways in our city. So I'm against the GNT program, and proudly so.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Cesar, what are your thoughts on the Gifted and Talented, or GNT program?
Sure. So look, there's no question that historically and to today, we students of color, people of color, are underrepresented and gifted and talented, and frankly overrepresented in special education. And for me, I think it's time. It's time that we do away with all programs that create tracks for folks. And for me, I think the real answer is really doubling down on early childhood education, specifically that 0 to 3 space where the brain is the most plastic, the brain is the most malleable, and the science is clear that if you give children the right start, and by that I mean not just like treat young learners as like these vessels where you're just pouring in knowledge and facts, where you're actually doing something for their approach to learning, for their love of learning. We're not going to need any of these tracking. We're not going to need any of these tracking systems. So again, I think I'm super excited about bringing the conversation to the city council about doubling down on our investments in early childhood education, not just the 3 and 4-year-olds, but for the 0 to 3, because that's really where we're going to see our biggest bang for our buck in terms of academic outcomes along the developmental lifespan. And that's the way to get rid of these ridiculous tracking programs, GNT, and all tracking programs across our K-12 educational system.
Thank you, Cesar. Alexa, GNT, what's your stance on this?
GNT and other screens like it have proven to be discriminatory and expensive. And so I am fine with doing away with GNT and other screens. I think there are many other methodologies that track and support students in their growth. There was a memo leaked by the Department of Education that said that doing the GNT exam would actually widen disparities because of the pandemic. Now, it's clear from that memo that the DOE knows that GNT is a discriminatory tool. And so it is way time to get rid of it. I will just say also, we need to get rid of specialized high school testing, get rid of all these screens that screen children out and discriminate against children that don't have the resources. And so that's, my position on these things.
Thank you, Alexa. Victor, gifted and talented program. What are your thoughts on it?
No child should be left behind. No child. I don't agree with it. I think that we need to have more funding in the schools, get some after-school programs going, some more tutoring. Our parents need to get more involved with their children's education also. I know sometimes it could be difficult with them working, but we also have to stay on them at home, get them away from those Xboxes and PlayStations. But we have to give them the tools and the resources necessary to advance in education.
Thank you, Victor. So now we're going to liven things up a little bit, and we're going to go into our lightning round. And Javier is going to talk to us about the exciting and fun lightning round.
All right, so the lightning round, we're just going yes or no. Yes or no. We're gonna just change it up a little bit. I think there's great segue with the questions that we just asked, because everyone was talking about learning and opportunities. So right now, because of the stimulus that just passed, New York City is going to get like $2 billion, right? So the question is, would you as city council work for $1 billion to be, out of the $2 billion, $1 billion to be given for smaller class size, so everyone gets better learning, and $1 billion for more school social workers, therapists, psychologists, for a lot of our communities have been traumatized by
the last year or so.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes or no. This comes from Class Size Matters. They're organizational group that works on legislation. So, they're a great organization to follow, and been working on this issue for a decade plus. So just are you in your role as city council, yes or no?
Okay. And we'll start with Alexa.
Yes, absolutely.
Cesar.
Yes, sí, claro, totally.
Jackie.
Yes.
Rodrigo.
Sí.
Victor.
Yes.
You.
Same, yes.
Very good. We'll go on to the next one. Javier.
Sorry, muted. Just toggling back from the. Okay. All right. So talking about keeping with education. So here in Sunset Park and with the waterfront, we have in Red Hook we have a lot of access to the MTA bus depot, the bus yard, and the train yard. City bikes, hospitals. We have the solar, wind, green energy. Projects, right? We have shipping containers and everything else. So would you be for creating trade schools and pipelines for our young people to really maximize this? Not, I know college is great, but not everybody makes it to college, and college doesn't receive a lot of our students well there. So in talking about education, a lot of them are not ready for college level work when they get to college, despite having a diploma, right? So we want to create other opportunities and not wait until they're 21 or whatever. We don't want to wait. So maybe add a little detail. Yes, no. Would you help create that for our community?
Very nice. And we'll start with you.
Yes, I will help to develop that. I'm all for equipping our youth, training them for a better future.
Victor.
Absolutely.
Rodrigo.
Absolutely. I think we need to create career pathways for students to specialize jobs and jobs that are available locally, especially. So yes, absolutely.
Jackie.
Yes, absolutely. We need to utilize our waterfront for maritime education, green infrastructure education, and jobs. Yes.
Cesar.
Yes, absolutely. And I would add to this adults, retooling adults, not just our young people, but adults as well.
Alexa.
Absolutely.
Great. Next one, Javier.
Next question is a little more general. There's always talk about city charter revision, about allowing non-citizen residents to vote. So in municipal elections, the city governs those, has the laws for that. So we could allow, just like in participatory budgeting, 16 and up that live in New York City to vote in our municipal elections, city council, those positions, right? So are you for that, against it, anything you would change?
Rodrigo, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. And you can read my bilingual op-ed on it called Let Immigrants Vote. And we don't need a charter revision for this. The city council could do this right now, and they can do it in time for the June elections. So yes, absolutely.
Alexa.
Absolutely, 100%.
Jackie.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say that we should also include our undocumented immigrants in this decision. Of course, if you pay rent, if you pay taxes, if your kids go to school, whatever it may be, you need to have a say in your municipal elections.
You.
Yes, I agree.
Victor.
Yes.
Cesar.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And we're doing one more lightning, Javier? And then going to our final? Or
yes, we could do one more. So this is about something that connects our communities, the Gowanus Expressway. There's a lot of for decades there's been talk about there's always state issues, city issues, but would you push for the burying of the Gowanus Expressway or another alternative to that issue? I know there's environmental issues either way, but just and also with the land that opens up. Being able to, 100% affordable housing,
we want your promise on that that issue. We want our community to have access to anything that's made available by taking that Robert Moses error down.
So we'll start with you.
Yes. More for affordable housing and also more schools, better infrastructures.
Thank you. Alexa.
Yes, community needs first. I don't know if I would look at if there are other alternatives that are safer for our community members and better. I don't know what they are, but I would love to get rid of that highway because it is blight and it's unhealthy for our community members. And 100% affordable all the way. We need to build what our community needs, not what developers want.
Victor.
I believe that as much work we did on that highway is ridiculous, but we have to find an alternative for all that traffic that's coming through on that highway. If we have a safe, environmental segue to get through the neighborhood, I'm all for it.
Cesar.
Yeah, look, it doesn't escape me that other communities have found, the engineering that needs to go into finding solutions. So there are precedents for doing this. So yes, 100%.
Jackie.
Yes, fully for this idea and using the space for green space, for affordable housing. That expressway is very dangerous and gives us a lot of pollution. We already have a high asthma rate. Let's do something else.
Rodrigo.
Yes, absolutely. We need to remove the Gowanus Expressway. I look towards a vision where we don't need as many cars and we don't have to bury it under the ground. But absolutely, and this can't be just a big giveaway to developers like the BQX. We need to do it in a way that's equitable and that considers community needs first, especially around affordable housing, infrastructure, and schools and parks, etc.
Great. So we are actually doing really good on time, and I want to thank you for being very precise in your answers, and we didn't need a buzzard or have to cut anyone off. So this is great. I like this format. We're just community folks sharing our ideas and what we think is best for the district. Now, this last question is a segue to a future forum that's going to take place in April. And that forum is going to be around immigration and workers' rights and a lot of things that affect our community. So this next question, and it's the same question for everyone, is as follows. If comprehensive immigration reform were to pass in Congress, what would you advocate for at the city council to support the nearly 1 million undocumented workers in the city and the thousands of our neighbors that live in this district? And
I want to give a shout out to Workers' Justice Project that is on track to host the next debate. So they're a great organization, and really to the other organizations who we hopefully will have monthly debates to really get to know you guys before the June 22nd election.
That's great.
Thank you. So we'll start with you. What would you help advocate for to help our immigrant community and our undocumented workers? We have 1 million of them in the city and thousands living in this district.
Right. I am an immigrant myself, and I'm very thankful for the immigration law that allowed me to came here when I was little. And I would also advocate for more resources, more resources to guide them as to how to get the so-called green card status and eventually be naturalized. Create a smoother pathway that. Like an American dream, they came here, they're here for a better life. So if they want to do it, we should provide them with a resource. And as long as you're following the rules, playing by the rules, paying the tax, doing the right things, we should definitely give them a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexa, your thoughts on this?
So the question was if and when we pass immigration reform.
I can repeat it. Definitely. So if comprehensive immigration reform were to pass in Congress, what would you advocate for at the city council to support the nearly 1 million undocumented workers in the city and the thousands of neighbors that live in this district?
Okay, that's fantastic. So the first thing I would do is many people who are becoming citizens don't even know they can register to vote. So the first thing we would want is to make sure everyone is registered to vote, to be prepared to have their voices heard. We would make sure that there are services that serve all the basic needs, that people are included 100%. And lastly, making sure that there is financial empowerment for the community as well. So those three things would be some of the top three things I'd be looking at.
Thank you, Alexa. Victor, same question.
Yeah, I would definitely work hard to get their citizenship, the process shortened. It almost seems like it takes forever for the immigrants to get their legal naturalization in this country. I would definitely vote for that. And listen, they're working, they're paying taxes, they're like ordinary citizens coming through the neighborhood. So we just have to ensure that they understand their rights, give them the resources for them to move through the system, and definitely help them speed up the paperwork for them to become U.S. citizens.
Thank you, Victor. Cesar, same question. How can we help our immigrant community?
Wow, I mean, so much comes to mind. And again, this is super personal to me because I know the difference when my parents went from being undocumented to being documented. The qualitative difference in our lives was like dramatic. And so I think for me, it would be certainly resources, making sure that all the resources that are available to folks now who are documented are available to our immigrant families. I would make sure that we double down on resources for trauma-informed services. Being an undocumented immigrant is traumatizing. And the history that we've had over the last 2 decades of how this country has thought of and treated undocumented folks has just created this massive trauma that we have to deal with in a straightforward way. So absolutely making sure that our services are trauma informed, that our public policy is trauma informed, and certainly language access, right? I think we need to start thinking about beyond translating stuff for folks, really doubling down on the resources to make sure that the immigrants who want to learn English, and by the way, most immigrants want to learn English. We just don't have the opportunities and the capacity to make that a reality for folks. So, and I can go on and on, but I think those would be my top priorities.
Thank you, Cesar. Jackie, same question.
Yes,
you can repeat it if you like.
No, it's fine. We need to do more for our immigrant neighbors, and we need to make sure first that we are reaching all of our undocumented neighbors, and we need to really focus on funding. The government needs to focus on funding legal expenses. These are extremely high expenses that can put families in debt, and the government can do a lot more to fund programs to help immigrant families, like the New York Immigrant Family Unity Project. Now, this is a program that is funded by the city council, and the city council, in my opinion, should put more funds into it. Our immigrants also are in need of the cash payments that they're not eligible for. because of no employment, for unemployment benefits, and COVID stimulus packages, right? This is something that can very much help a family. And after that, this is, by the way, this legislation is landmark legislation, a victory for immigrant rights activists. And this financial barrier needs to be broken. After we do all of that, of course, we need to make sure that we invest in everyone's voting rights. And we need to make sure that our city stays a sanctuary city at all times by fully kicking ICE out of New York City, ending ICE cooperation with NYPD, and also remembering that a lot of our immigrant neighbors are essential workers. They have taken us out of this pandemic. We need to make sure that they have workplace protections. We should work on unionizing to make sure that they have financial stability and healthcare. And these are just something that are basic human rights, and can't wait to work on them.
Thank you, Jackie. Rodrigo, same question.
Thanks, Rob. I've spent my life working and fighting for immigrants right out of college and even before then. And I now run a national immigrant advocacy group called the Immigration Advocates Network. So this is very personal to me. Also, as a naturalized citizen who migrated to this country as a kid, when comprehensive immigration reform happens, we need to be prepared from day one with the right legal support. Legal services need to be robust so that everyone that's eligible for a form of relief and status can navigate the system and can navigate those new policies and laws. And not just the most privileged and best connected and best informed. The same inequities and barriers that we saw with access to tablets and any kind of government benefit we're going to see with comprehensive immigration reform. I want to ensure that once folks gain status, that they have access to every benefit that they missed out on during the pandemic, including stimulus checks and including the relief that we're still fighting for excluded workers. We need to ensure that the city's ready to help provide new folks with status with information on how to access benefits offered by HRA, offered by the Department of Education, everything that they've been excluded from for much too long and unjustly. We need to ensure that we do right by and provide in a robust manner. I'm excited for the potential of relief and reform. Many of our neighbors are going to benefit greatly. Their lives are going to change overnight, and we need to be there ready on the ground from day one to help them manage that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So we did great on time. Thank you so much. I know I fell asleep. I appreciate that. Now, in closing, everyone has... Oh, Javier?
Just wondering if we're going to take any live questions from our audience. There's a couple of questions. I don't know.
There's a couple. If you see one there that you think, I know there's always the live chat is always very entertaining, and this time is no exception. There's a really hot debate on GNT, and but I think we addressed that. If there's anything that you see in the
it's because we have being translated, so we have a different chat in the Zoom. So I just saw a question about the question of like choice schools and top schools, and how that when you identify one as the top school, it has this domino effect, and being able to go to a school outside of your zone has that segregation issue for our community, where we don't have a GNT program, but there is. You start seeing a drifting of families in different places. So kind of like talking about that issue where it's not in our community, we don't have GNT programs per se, but we do have this separation that occurs, and how address that. It could be just as a community conversation or as a policy issue.
Okay, so we'll throw that out to. Let's start with Rodrigo.
I'm sorry. Can you reiterate the question, Javier?
Sure, no problem. It's just the identifying of top schools, right? Like if you go to this elementary school, you'll go to this middle school, which then you will go to Stuyvesant and be the right, and it's not a GNT program.
but it's what happens, right? Like these schools are known, and it has a cascade effect. You don't go to the top school, you go to the one of the lower tier or the lower tier school, right? And it's not a program, but it affects the process anyways, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interpreting it as a question around screens and the kind of system that we've created where if you go to a certain elementary school, it then sets you up for a certain middle school and high school. I think that system is wrong. I don't think we should be stratifying our students in that way. We should have, a diversity of academic and class and, and race at every school. We shouldn't have schools that are specialized for the super well achieving, super wealthy, or the folks that are of a certain race and ethnicity. So I, would work towards a system that has that kind of diversity reflected, because that's the diversity of New York.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Same question, Alexa. And
Yeah,
Javier, can
no.
you repeat it if?
No, it's fine. That is a problematic issue, and I think the way to address it, right, is to have quality schools across the board. The District 15 implemented a diversity initiative to try to address integration in schools where we were seeing this cascading effect of wealthier families pretty much attending the high achieving, what was known as the high achieving schools. And the diversity initiative has been in effect a couple of years now, and it has had, it's a basic lottery system now. And it has had a mitigating effect on helping equalize both race, socioeconomic class across the district, right? All of our schools should be good quality schools. And that is the way we're going to mitigate both just people's self-interest. Everyone wants the best for their children, right? No one says, "Oh, I want to take my kid to the worst school ever." So that's the only way to address it, is to fully fund our schools, to make sure we have quality education, culturally responsive education, teachers that reflect our community, where parents feel comfortable with their children going to any school in their districts.
Thank you, Alexa. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah. So it seems to me that the issue lies within the equal the opportunity, the equality of the resource, whether they're from rich family, disadvantaged family. I think they all should have the equal resource. And what I mean by equal resource, meaning that they have the actual and practical needs available, open to them to compete with others. I mean, after all, we all living in a very competitive world. So our children, our next generation, needs to be more competitive, even compared to our generation. That's just the world is. The world is moving on in a faster and a faster pace. If you're not the most competitive one, you're going to be left out. We just have to let them be exposed to that kind of competitive environment while they're in school. Otherwise, when they're graduated, when they finish high school, finish college, it will be too late for them to, if they're not equipped, it will be too late for them to face the reality in many cases. And I'm speaking from my own experience, from the friends that I know. They've been very well protected throughout the years, and now they're just not competitive. So hopefully they can catch up. But I don't know who to blame. I just think that more resources should have directed to them, and also, they have to be more competitive. Our school is not competitive enough. And again, I want to stress it. I want to emphasize and stress this point. I do believe that every family, regardless of the social status, the children should have the equal opportunity and resource to achieve the highest that they're aiming for. Thank you.
Thank you. Cesar, same question.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think first of all schools should be top schools. That's number one. But number two, I think, again, back to this is an equity question. This is all about equity. And I think for me, the answer really lies in like short, medium, and long-term planning. And the long term really, again, is how do we even the playing field from the very beginning? Right, because I think there's a lot of evidence and science behind the idea that, you know, kids start to fall behind pretty quickly, and that falling behind starts in that critical, you know, age range of 0 to 5. And so I think if we wanna create better schools, we have to even the playing field from very early on in the lifespan. And I think this also comes back to our funding formula, right? So like our schools are woefully underfunded. However, in addition to bringing parity to the funding, the existing funding formula, we also have to have some serious conversations about greater investments in education, and greater investments require us to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And so, to me, it's not a question of not having the resources to pay. To me, it's a question of not having the right priorities. And so, you know, part of what I'm looking forward to do in the council is to really have some serious conversations about what are our priorities, and really realigning that priority list so that education and healthcare are the top priorities for the city.
Thank you, Cesar. Jackie, same question.
I'm going to keep it brief because it's simple. Quality education is a human right for everyone. A quality education can define everyone's life, a child's life, and it shouldn't be cut short because of the zip code that you live in, or because of the school you attend, or the salary that your parent has. Education cannot be this competition as it is now. And, you know, we have a lot of our focus right now in education, I think, is skewed. We need to focus it back on the children. Every single child deserves this quality education. The city has enough funding for this in the city budget. We just need to spend it.
Thank you, Jackie. Victor, same question.
Also, I would keep it simple too. Inclusion for all ethnicities. We have to ensure that those children who we might feel are left behind, that we get them the resources, the extra schooling, if possible, after schooling, tutoring, to get them on par. I think that we just can't say, oh, you're going to Stuyvesant, you know, we're going to give them everything. And if you're going to Fort Hamilton, well, let's just get him out of the class. And let's just hope that he passes and graduates. So we'll just have another statistic as a graduate. We have to ensure that they are prepared to go to college. You know, I'm also an adjunct professor, and I'm telling you, these children are not prepared for college. A lot of them are not. And we have to work hard to ensure that they are prepared to go to college, and we can't leave no kid behind. I can't say that enough.
Thank you, Victor. So, in closing, you all will get 30 seconds to tell us why we should vote for you in June. And we'll start with Jackie. Why should we vote for you?
All right. Well, thank you all so much again for having me. It's really been great to be here and speak with my fellow candidates. I am a lifelong activist and community organizer. I have worked in Red Hook for the past 5 years at the Red Hook Senior Center. I am the only mutual aid candidate in the race who's been on the ground during this pandemic, who has met the needs of our communities. Right now, our city is facing an unprecedented crisis, and we will need someone who will not be quiet or back down, who will be a loud fighter and advocate for all of our communities to bring the resources and the investment that we need. Like I said, I've been on the ground fighting injustices as an activist and community organizer my entire life. I have a proven track record of building coalitions, listening to the different voices in the district, and bringing our communities together to enact change. Slogans and catchphrases aren't enough. We need true policies, actions, and plans to get the changes our communities so desperately need.
Thank you, Jackie. Why should we vote for you?
Because I am one of the ordinary citizens, longtime resident in Sunset Park. I don't want to say that I just represent you. In fact, I am one of you guys, you people, the silent majority. I'm running because I want to get things fixed. I believe that politics is not a game. It's not about calling big ideas or even attacking the other party. It's about getting things fixed, practical things done. Get our streets safer, cleaner, more jobs, affordable housing, and listen to people. I'm always there, physically there to listen to you when you need me to. And I don't BS. I tell you what's in my mind and tell you straightforward. But I'm always tolerant. I'll listen to different opinions and I'll explain to you why I have my opinion at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexa, why should we vote for you?
Thank you so much for the question. So I haven't just activated. I've been working in this community quietly behind the scenes with community residents for years and years. I am interested in this community and in representing our residents to the best of our capacity. My interest is in obtaining the resources that we need and deserve, eliminating policies that hurt us, creating policies that finally center us, the working class folks of this community, and to create an office that's responsive and an elected office that we are proud of, that is our office. And so the challenges are going to be really great, and it won't be easy. But together we are resilient, and our collective power, we will be able to address the challenges because we are the solutions that we need. And so thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Alexa. Cesar, why should we vote for you?
Sure. So look, having grown up in a working class immigrant family and community, and having overcome many structural barriers, I understand in a very personal way how important local government is in bringing opportunity to communities like ours. I've spent my entire professional career serving working class and underserved communities, and education has been and will continue to be the most important tool to bring about opportunity, liberation, and empowerment of people like us. Both my personal and professional experiences will continue to inform the campaign and my tenure on the city council. And I hope you'll rank me as your first choice vote on June 22nd. And please stay engaged with us online at cesarforcouncil.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cesar. Rodrigo, why should we vote for you?
Thank you so much, first of all, to the organizers. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with all the candidates. I am the only candidate in this race that's actually worked in government. Not only worked in government for a number of years, but worked in government during a time of crisis after Hurricane Superstorm Sandy. I'm the only candidate in this race that stood up loudly and proudly to the Industry City rezoning and have been fighting displacement and the real estate corporate force that wants to consume this entire community. And, I'm the only candidate in this race that is a lifelong immigrant advocate. I started working with Mixteca since I was 20. I became executive director at 22 and have been fighting for immigrants and working class families my entire life. We're building a people-powered campaign. We're not backed by any super political machine. We're here to build community with you and build solutions with you. If you're interested in joining us, go to rodrigofornyc.com or follow us on social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Victor, why should we vote for you?
I have been a lifelong resident of Sunset Park. Spent a lot of my young adult days in Red Hook. I have this district in my heart. I will allow the people in the district to use me as their voice. This is not Victor Swinton's seat in the council. This is the people of District 38 in the council. I will be their bridge to get things done in this community. So I ask that they vote for me if they want real change, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. I want to thank the candidates, this is going to be a very tough choice for our community to make, because I know you all well. I've had the opportunity to sit with you and talk about the issues of this district, and I see a real love from every single one of you. Love, true passion about what is right for our district. And our neighbors have a tough choice come June. But I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being so open about what you believe and see for in this district. I also want to thank Javier for being our co-moderator and keeping things in line as we move along. And I want to remind everyone that in April, please stay tuned for another forum that's going to be hosted by Workers' Justice Project.
I just want to give a shout out to our interpreters,
yes,
to Susan, to Julie, to Genesis, and to Diana, who have been behind the scenes translating simultaneously. We've done an excellent job. Rob, who opened up his platform for us to share it, and to everybody who's watching and listening and commenting. We hope this kicks off a more lively debate as we quickly head to June 22nd.
Yes. Thank you, Javier. Thank you all. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you all next month at the next candidate forum. There is going to be a debriefing tomorrow, I believe, hosted by Love Trumps Hate, Sunset Park. And check them out and see what everyone thinks of the candidates and everything we spoke about. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Thank you.